Welcome to everyone this morning. Welcome to you to our Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Door County. I'm Bob Lindahl, your service leader this morning. And I'm looking around. I'm not sure I see any visitors this morning, but if you are one, if you're hiding somewhere, would you please stand? And if you would like to, and introduce yourself. Okay, we'll move ahead then. And if Brother Good would help us with the microphone. We will move into some announcements. Just want to read something, though, that we normally start out each service helping remind us who we are as Unitarian Universalists. And I came across this from Marjorie Ashley from the UK. In our fellowship, you'll find a religious home where your doubts are not ridiculed, your guilts are lightened, your griefs are comforted, your joys are celebrated, your children are taught all religions, your talents are nurtured, your concerns are shared, your reason is honored, your friendships are deepened, your love of art and beauty is expanded, your need to serve others is fostered, your need to laugh is encouraged, and your individual decision is treasured. So these are the aspirations of the Unitarian Universalist congregations. And if they are yours, we invite you to join with us as we all help try to achieve them. So Terry, if there's anyone who has an announcement this morning, would you raise your hand, please? Please introduce yourself so our people online know who you are.
I'm Meg Ziegelman. How many of you remember this sign? Marilyn does. Okay, Helene does. 10 years ago, we had our very first Golden Heart Award of one of our parishioners happen. And at the dinner, during that part of that ceremony, we each had a tree at our table setting. And so that Sunday we came back deciding that there were, I think, 13 of us that we should recognize all the volunteerism that we do. And so we planted, after service, 13 trees in this back corner. We wanted to create kind of a little buffer from the back trash part of the place next door. Well, with just having been awarded 6 more to our Golden Heart Awards to our parishioners who have done outstanding volunteer work, we thought it was time to revise this, bring it back out, refinish it. It got kind of tattered looking. Carl Wise did that for us. And so when you're in the back now, you watch for this. And thank you everyone who has contributed to making the volunteer effort here happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Meg. Is there anyone else? Marianne?
So today is third Sunday, and we're now in the second month of our third quarter of the 25th anniversary community support initiative. And this quarter we are raising money for HELP of Door County. And some of you might remember that it was a month ago, Millie Gonzalez, the executive director of HELP, was here to tell us about their programs. And just quickly, I'll remind you, or if you were not here and don't know what they do, HELP provides free and confidential services to victims of trauma and domestic violence. They're the only organization in Door County focusing on this. They offer safe homes, transitional living, legal advocacy, support groups, community outreach, youth and family services, and older adult victim services. So thanks. Just a reminder, it's third Sunday.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, thank you. Just a couple of other items before we start our service this morning. We ask that if you have a phone that might still be on, you turn it off, or other noise-making device. Our talk back today will begin right after the service, not quite right after. We'll probably give about 10 minutes or so for coffee, and then find your way back in here. We'll hold our talk back as usual over in this corner, and hopefully be joined by a few of our online people on Zoom. So you'll hear the chimes ring again to remind you to come back in here for the talk back. Our speaker today is Andrew Phillips, and we welcome Andrew back to our fellowship. Andrew is a journalist and a Door County native whose work has appeared in multiple Door County and regional publications. He's an alumnus of Gibraltar High School and graduated in philosophy and journalism from Marquette University. And he is founder and editor of Door County Knock, and we look forward to hearing a little bit about that today, in addition to the rest of his message. So welcome, Andrew. Good to have you back again. So we're now ready to begin our service. The reading this morning is straight from the Unitarian Universalist Mental Health Network. We envision a world where the beloved community is a place where all members feel welcomed, understood, and held in love, engages in respectful curiosity to understand emotional distress, welcomes open, authentic, and fearless sharing about mental health, and passionately commits to mental health justice. As we prepare for the unison affirmation and doxology today, I just thought I'd it hit me as I was preparing and looked at the unison affirmation, which of course we all recite by rote each time. And if we're regular attenders, we don't probably look at the bulletin to read the words, but it just as a kind of a personal note in preparing for the service, beginning to recite these words in this fellowship almost 20 years ago now for me, because I attended for a few years on the QT before I joined. But it was one of those events back then, and a little earlier than then actually, that helped me along a path to move away from dogma that I had been so immersed in. And I eventually realized after having recited this for a while, and with the help of that and other things that I was reading, eventually realized that my own anxieties began to be reduced. And my own mental health began to be more stable and improved. And maybe some of you can identify with that when you found Unitarian Universalism, that there were some things freed from you that allowed you to be you. So please rise as you're able, and let's recite the unison affirmation and hum the doxology. We gather together to speak knowledge and wisdom, to explore freely the vast reaches of mind and spirit, to celebrate within the caring community those truths, ancient and modern, which give meaning and direction to our lives. Thank you. Seated. And now Brother Terry is ready again with the microphone. So does anyone have a joy or concern they would like to share with us this morning? Carol.
Carol and Ken Boyd of Bailey's Harbor, and we're happy to be back here on Wednesday for the next half year from Florida, back to this haven of mental health.
My kid Artie, who most of you know as Anya, but now goes by Artie, they just completed their MFA project at Brooklyn College and will be getting their master's in performance and interactive media arts at the ceremony next weekend.
A joy and impromptu one here, seeing Alan stand up. If you haven't seen him in the play, Slow Food, you gotta go. He's really good. He's very good. And the amount of energy that it takes to do the role that he has is mind-blowing. So, go.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you. So it's now time to take our offering for the morning. We encourage you to give generously to assist in our work as a fellowship. And of course, today, anything that's unmarked for a pledge will be donated to our anniversary recipient this year, or this quarter, Help Woodrow County. So. Thank you, Beth. It's always a pleasure to have you with us here. And now let's take a little time to quiet our hearts and minds as we prepare for Andrew's message this morning. So I encourage you to participate in the moment of quiet.
Good morning. The reading today comes from the book Dandelion Wine by Ray Bradbury. For anyone not familiar, it's a novel but semi-autobiographical description of his own childhood in Waukegan, Illinois. So the passage I'm about to read features the two main characters, which are Douglas Spalding, who's a 12-year-old boy and sort of a stand-in for Bradbury, and then Douglas's younger brother, Tom. He brought out a yellow nickel tablet. He brought out a yellow Ticonderoga pencil. He opened the tablet. He licked the pencil. Tom, he said, you and your statistics gave me an idea. I'm going to do the same, keep track of things. For instance, you realize that every summer we do things over and over again that we did the whole darn summer before? Like what, Doug? Like making dandelion wine, like buying these new tennis shoes, like shooting off the first firecracker of the year, like making lemonade, like getting slivers in our feet, like picking wild fox grapes. Every year the same things, same way, no change, no difference. That's one half of summer, Tom. What's the other half? Things we do for the first time ever. Like eating olives? Bigger than that. Like finding out maybe that grandpa or dad don't know everything in the world. They know every darn thing there is to know, and don't you forget it. Tom, don't argue. I already got it written down under discoveries and revelations. They don't know everything, but it's no crime. That I discovered too. What other new crazy stuff you got in there? I'm alive. Heck, that's old. Thinking about it, noticing it is new. You do things that don't watch. Then all of a sudden you look and see what you're doing, and it's the first time, really. So good morning again. My name is Andrew Phillips. As Bob said, it's an honor to be back with you all. I spoke here last July, I believe, and then virtually again in January. I am the executive director of NOC, a nonprofit news organization that I started 2 years ago. We publish online and we cover Door County, and in particular, local government and social and economic issues affecting the community. And we really sort of focus on in-depth pieces rather than daily coverage. And one of our goals and part of our mission is to create a more informed and more productive public discourse about issues that are affecting residents. A couple updates since the last time I spoke with you. We have sort of exited the startup phase of the organization and are now working on planning our next phase of growth. I have also, the last time I spoke with you, I still had a day job as a computer programmer for a software company in Sturgeon Bay. I'm now working full-time for NOC as the executive director. So that's been an exciting change in the past few months. We've also, in the past few months, been focusing a lot on reporting on the county government's plans for the stimulus money that it's getting through the American Rescue Plan, and the various proposals that the county's putting together for affordable housing, substance dependency, childcare, broadband internet, environmental work, and so on. So that's just a little bit about updating where we are. When I think about mental health in Door County, I often think about it on an individual level. Students in the past few years dealing with learning from home and the after effects of that during the pandemic, away from their peers at home and in home environments that can be difficult sometimes. Seniors in an aging community, in some cases living in isolation or facing loneliness. Seasonal employees or other residents grappling with seasonal depression in the off season when empty stretches of time and limited social opportunities can sort of snowball. And neighbors struggling with substance dependency. I think it's so important that we also look at mental health on a community level. Door County, I think for a lot of people, is a place to escape. It's certainly true of visitors in the summer, but I think it can be true for those of us who live here as well. I know it has been for me. I moved back here in 2015 as a young adult, really looking for direction and meaning in my life and in my career. And Door County felt like a safe place to return to. What I discovered was that the idyllic place that I saw growing up. A lot of the people I knew, my friends and neighbors, were really struggling to put food on the table, to pay for childcare, especially in houses where both parents were working. And there's sort of this tough decision with, is sending my entire paycheck to childcare worth it? And also struggling to find a place to live. I think the fact that we live in such a beautiful and desirable place can make it easy to believe that we don't have to deal with the toughest problems in the world. But Door County is not immune to social and economic challenges that can exist in any community, and it's not immune to the responsibility of citizens, of us as citizens, to engage with those challenges and try to address them. I believe that facing our community's challenges head on and having open and direct conversations about them is a form of community mental health, that it's healthy for us as a community to do so. When we avoid tough issues or tiptoe around them, it can have negative effects on people who are dealing with those issues directly, and it can make it harder for individuals to maintain or work toward their mental health. So I wanted to touch on just a few examples. I mentioned part of our work at NOC is covering the county government, and so I watch a lot of the county board meetings and committee meetings. And I was watching the County Health and Human Services Board meeting a few months ago when Sue Powers, the public health officer for the county who's retiring next month, she was talking about a recent study that was about public health staff and how the COVID-19 pandemic has affected them. I was alarmed when Sue said that many of the public health staff members had PTSD symptoms. And thinking about it, it's maybe not surprising that public health staff who are sort of on the front lines and dealing with all of the horrors and the grief of COVID-19 would be struggling with that. But it made me think that if we somehow as a community could have a more open and honest conversation about how we approach the pandemic, one that builds more trust in and commitment to one another, maybe that burden on our frontline workers could be eased, if only a little bit. On a side note, I admire the UE's approach to COVID-19 precautions and the transparency and the trust that you use in that. I also wanted to touch a bit on substance dependency. This is something that we've been reporting on at NOC a lot recently, and we just published an in-depth story a couple weeks ago about the county's proposal for a sober living facility that would be using some of that stimulus money from the American Rescue Plan to open a sober living facility for the first time in several years in the county. The context of that is that the county has been dealing with a wave of cases of meth addiction in the past few years that are relatively small in numbers still, but great in their complexity and their effects on a whole lot of human services that the county deals with, both substance dependency issues themselves, but then also child welfare and a whole host of other things. I was interviewing some leaders in the County Health and Human Services Department a few months ago, and I was struck by something one of those leaders said. This comes from Don Altapeter, who's the county's behavioral health manager, and in journalism, we're taught that the best time to use a quote is when you couldn't say it better yourself. So I'm just going to quote from her here. Donna said, "This is a recreational community and alcohol has been part of that recreational culture. You hear that even from our people who do come for treatment, who all think, I drink, but I'm not using meth, I'm not that bad. There are people, our own citizenry, who view themselves as set apart. You hear a lot of people who minimize up here. Part of that is that it's part of the culture. It's I'm on vacation." She said, I think about how much I love Door County and I'm seeing an underbelly that a lot of people don't see. I don't want to ignore that, or something's going to happen to our county that we don't want to see and we're not going to like it. This is an issue for everyone to get behind. End quote. So this is another issue, I think, where the more we can talk openly and honestly about it, the healthier community's relationship with substance abuse or substance use is going to be, and the easier it will be for people to recover from addiction. Just a couple other examples briefly. I think it's easy to make connections between so many community issues and our conversations about them and mental health. When young families and workers have to struggle to find an affordable and consistent place to live that's available year-round, that puts a strain on them and can affect their mental health. To the extent that we as a community can build a more trusting and productive public discourse about housing and about what affordable housing is and who benefits from it, we might be able to make that strain a little bit easier. I know, as Mary Ann said, that the UU is fundraising this quarter for help of Door County and the important work that they do in mental health and domestic abuse. I know Millie would be able to speak to this a lot better than I can, but I imagine that one of the first challenges for help in working with community members to address mental health and domestic abuse is recognizing that those problems exist in Door County, that we're not, as I said, immune from those. So I think we as a community can help to address these issues by recognizing them and having direct conversations about them. I'm not a UU. I grew up in the Ephraim Moravian Church just down the road, but I've become familiar with the 7 UU principles, and I have so much respect for them and for the work that you all do. I think so many of them relate to this conversation we're having today about mental health in our community, but I want to touch on just a few. The first principle, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. The second principle, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. Sort of tying these two together, I think it's so important to view mental health on an individual level through the lens of the inherent worth and dignity of every person. And similarly, this idea of mental health on a community level really is dovetails or is intertwined with our responsibilities to each other as community members and fellow human beings, and that principle of justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. The fourth principle, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. And the fifth principle, the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. I certainly relate to the fourth principle as a journalist, and I think it applies directly to the conversations we can have as a community about the challenges we face in terms of searching for truth and meaning and then what to do with that information. But I want to focus on the fifth principle here and to explore its implications for each of us as individuals in building the community conversations we need to improve mental health. In the reading today, 2 children, Douglas and Tom Spalding, explore the idea of noticing what you're doing, thinking about what it means to be alive. Thinking about it, noticing it is new. You do things and don't watch, and then all of a sudden you look and see what you're doing, and it's the first time really. I chose this reading because it reminds me of something a mentor taught me early on in my career as a reporter. Notice what you notice, he said. As you're walking around in the community, if you notice something that's different or has changed, notice that, engage with it. It could be newsworthy. That particular lesson applies pretty directly to a reporter's job, but I think the principle is also relevant for each of us as we try to answer the question of how we can improve community mental health. If each of us can notice what we notice, those moments can be the start of community conversations about issues. As you notice what you notice, think, what community conversations could be had about this? What actions can be taken? If we each can notice what we notice, engage with it, and turn that noticing, that thought, into action, I think we can go a long way toward creating more direct and honest community conversations and thereby improving our community's mental health. Thank you so much for having me today, and thank you for all the work that you do.
Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate your time with us this morning.